Good afternoon, everybody. This is Caro, your host at The Free Toaster. I'm with Free Toaster co-founder Nick Madrid. Every single week, we look at 4,000 to 6,000 stories across consumer lending, marketing, and technology. And we find the best 10 to 20 stories and we put them in your inbox. If you're not on our newsletter, check it out. We're at thefreetoaster.com. And on the news pod, we find one story and we dig a little deeper to uncover trends and talk about connecting dots within the business. Before I move to this week's story, I want to thank our sponsors, Bulldog Media Group, Spinwheel, and Fintel Connect. Nick, this week we headlined the Fiserv and Affirm partnership. They're bringing buy now, pay later to debit cards. Your headline for the week was WTF 2026 is debit now credit. Kind of caught us by surprise as we looked at it. And as we've been peeling the onion of the story, I think it's actually starting to make more sense what's going on. But the first thing I noticed was the partnership isn't actually new. The press release read that way to me. But these folks have been working together since 2022, apparently. Fiserv has been enabling their merchants to do installment plans on transactions through the Fiserv network. So this is really just an extension of an existing partnership. What else have you heard about the deal, Nick?
Yeah, so what happened this week is that, they moved beyond the merchant side, more to the issuing side, which is like the second half of their big business. And, it's a massive shift. Fiserv is now enabling thousands of financial institutions between banks and credit unions, I think what we collectively call the long tail, to offer Affirm, pay over time capabilities directly on the debit cards. And you and I were talking about, the strategy here. And when we prepped this morning, you used one specific word to help kind of describe this. And you said that they're on the defense. And so tell me more about that.
Yeah, no, so one thing I noticed many years ago is, and I think Amex might have been the first that I noticed, but they had a product called Planet, which essentially let a consumer take any credit card transaction and do an installment plan on a specific transaction unit. And since then, I've seen these things at Chase, at Citi. A lot of the big issuers have this functionality. It seems to me like they built it all in-house. In my eyes, it was like this generational thing that was going on where Gen Z, if you look at the data, they lean more towards debit products than they do credit products. And in my view, these big issuers were starting to play defense against that and enabling buy now, pay later on their products to really start to attract some of these folks in the younger generation that like the stability and certainty of fixed payments versus revolving credit. And to me, this partnership between Affirm and Fiserv just lets the long tail of issuers, the credit unions, the smaller banks that don't have the sophistication and technology in-house to build this on their own to still be able to offer it.
Yeah, I think it's important because, one of the big things that helps them keep spend in their own ecosystem, like I'm assuming they clearly want that debit interchange. While it might not move the needle and be huge, like clearly they want to keep that close. But more from just the relationship itself, just to keep that spend within the ecosystem is probably, a big goal for them and not having to go off to somebody else to get this quote, buy now, pay later solution.
Yeah, Nick, did you see any numbers on that just quantifying the generational trend across credit, debit, or potentially buy now, pay later usage?
It's really interesting. I think when we think about who this is for, the target audience, like frankly, I don't think it's for you or me. I think there's a massive generational shift happening, probably to no surprise to many. And we pulled some data where, despite having lower total debt balances, Gen Z delinquency rates have surpassed 10%. I believe those numbers came from the Fed, and that's a level we haven't seen since the '08 crisis. And this generation just generally distrusts traditional credit cards, and they see them as a debt trap, but they are embracing more buy now, pay later, solutions at a massive, rate.
Yeah, I find the whole trend interesting because, we hit this a little bit in the newsletter, but just to put a sharper point on it, I think fintech's done a really good job over the last decade, maybe more, getting access to credit in the hands of folks that historically have been excluded from credit. A lot of the fintechs I see play either in buy now, pay later, or in subprime credit, or earned wage access. Nick, you were at Chime, so you're very close to, or you have been very close to that market. So, I mean, fintechs have done a great job providing frictionless access to credit. My worry with something like this, what we're seeing with Affirm and Fiserv, is that it's almost too frictionless to get into debt. Like you made a big transaction on a debit card, presumably because you had the money in your account. And now the bank's popping a note in your app saying, actually, you don't have to withdraw those $300 from your account today. You could actually spread it out over 6 months. And I could see folks unintentionally getting themselves into a debt situation that they may not have planned for or intended simply because it's so easy. And if I'm a lender, that serves this category, particularly this younger generation, I'm probably watching this closely because now, and I guess we hadn't even raised the question, Nick, but now it comes to mind of, will this even be reported to the credit bureaus? Like, does this show up as a loan and as a debt transaction on the credit bureaus? Like, that's a question mark for me. Yeah. And if the answer is no, man, does it start to really, it gets really hard to measure debt to income ratios and debt loads and things like that if they're not even showing up at Experian, for example.
Yeah, and like I think this is a call to action for us where we need to learn more about this Gen Z in general and like the Gen Z shift. I feel like we're sounding a bit like dinosaurs here, and I was trying to think through this, and so if you'll humor me, I want you to re-report this story in a Gen Z language. So just to start our exploration into understanding this. So here's an excerpt. I want you to read it so we can connect with this generation right now, and we'll learn more going on.
Am I starting at note to self?
Are you game? Yeah. This is reporting on the Affirm Fiserv deal in Gen Z language.
All right, here we go. Note to self: bust it down, Roman Emperor style. Haters will say this partnership is mid, but they don't know we plugged its tea. The debit card feature was yawned out of a legacy bank. Then Fiserv snatched it, turned it into an API. Now the credit unions are leveling up. The phantom debt is low-key cooking, no cap.
I couldn't have done any better. This is perfect.
I have no idea what I just said.
It means banks are waking up, Carlos. That's what it means. And you and I are going to follow this trend all the way through.
Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to add to this one before we wrap?
No, this is too good. So,
well, one thing, I mentioned this off the cuff earlier. Our events business is in full swing. We're super excited to bring live events, community to this audience. And we have an event coming up in early March, New York City. It's sponsored by ICS. They're a direct mail production shop and agency based in the Philadelphia area. And they are looking for folks who want to chat with their peers and learn more about how to make the direct mail marketing channel successful. So if that sounds like you and you want to hang out with your peers and trade notes, this might be the event for you. Hit us up if you're interested.
Thanks, Carlos. See you later.
All right.
Bye.